Hello, we're here at the BFT. I've got the wonderful Julian Wiseman with me here. Although I just clarified, Julian D.A. Wiseman, and we have to say the initials because there is another Julian Wiseman, I believe.
There is another Julian Wiseman who wrote The History of the British Pig, which I've read and I admit was a rather specialist book. There's nothing wrong with specialist books, they're good things, but it wasn't my specialisation, so I always use the initials, J.D.A. Wiseman or Julian D.A. Wiseman, just to deconfuse us.
Yes, don't want to mix up ports and pigs. Do you ever get people emailing you about pigs?
No, never, not yet, so I'm easy on that one.
We'll try and avoid any pig questions then. It would be terrible if that's all the questions I prepared, all entirely based or something. But don't find it, you have the second edition of your book is coming out very soon. What is the release date?
Well, I'm hoping for early autumn, but it's the nature of the beast that, is, particularly with all the supply chain problems, I can't be precise. Early autumn 2022.
Okay, well, keep an eye out for it. You know, follow all the appropriate social channels. I'm sure if you're in the Port Forum, it'll be promoted on there. It was described as the definitive reference book by George Sandeman, so it's quite a title to claim. And
I claim it.
Yes, you should, deservedly so. It's a hefty book with a lot of very useful information in it.
Explain the conceit to your
Please
audience.
do.
Most wine, particularly say French wine, is made every year. Chateau Mouton the Rothschild will make a wine every year, and if it sun shines, it's great, and if it pours all year, not so much. But they will make a wine every year. Not true of vintage port. Only in some years. Begs an obvious question. Which years did which houses declare, to use the term of art? Pretty obvious. You just write to them. They'll know. End of problem. You don't need an author. You don't need a book. Just write to them. And they sent answers, all of which were wrong. It's pretty impressive. Replies went along the lines of, your list doesn't include 1958. But I've had your 58, and it's okay. It's quite good. Oh, okay. Add that to the list. Another reply came back, including 1981. You sure? You really sure 1981? Yeah, I'm definite. Grandpa made it. I'll check with him. 2 days later, lose the 81. So they didn't know.
Yeah.
So I've been through the records. That is the records the firms sent me. That is records of purchasers in this country and elsewhere, of intermediaries, anything I could find. Wine committees are a particular joy. Wine committees in the 1800s, some of them took detailed notes at every meeting, every month. There are these things coming to them at so many pounds a pipe. Who would buy a dozen bottles? It's pathetically small. So many pounds a pipe. And they would taste one bottle drawn from each of 8 or 10 pipes and conclude that of this particular vintage we're going to buy half a pipe of this and half a pipe of this and 1 pipe of that. And that would keep the members of the club happy until they next needed to buy port. These records have been lost. They're not lost in the sense of gone. They're lost in the sense of no one knows they're there. No one looks at them. No one reads them. One place told me explicitly that they were going to throw these things away because no one has looked at them since the war. And then I wrote asking to look at them. And all of that is now gathered together in one rather thick book being used to hold up this camera.
Yes.
Which is not optimal of us. We'll take a shot afterwards. And after the book was published, more data came. Readers read, but you haven't looked at this source of data. Oh, hell. What about this? Oh, hell. And so I've been through those data too, and it's going to be about 50-ish pages longer, maybe 60. I was sent more data yesterday evening.
Constantly new stuff being thrown up then.
But it's new old. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, it's a history book.
Yeah.
If you want to know, did Graham declare 1994? The answer is most wine merchants, or many wine merchants, will have it for sale. A search engine is your friend. If you want to know, did they declare 1884? Search engines don't know so much because they're lost. The records are lost in archives. And I've been to those archives for you so that you can know.
Fantastic. Is there a year where there's a convergence of it's quite readily available information and lost the archives? Is there a point where it crosses over?
Well, I found myself gathering data about modern vintages and thought, this is all Googleable. Where am I going to draw the line? And in 86, they switched from having to go over the bar at Gaia, which meant that the only shippers could be ones that could afford premises in Gaia, which meant they were big blenders who bought from all the quintas, and only a few dozen names actually shipped port out. When that rule got scrapped, suddenly Quinta Small could bottle its own wine, could sell its own wine. So it went from a small number of houses of great houses to a huge number of single quintas that are constantly shifting. And I thought that's the time to draw my line. So I include vintages up to 86 in detail and give a passing mention of later vintages.
Brilliant. It's quite an interesting deep dive for people who have an interest in port, because they might have an image of what the port landscape is, and you've uncovered all these archives that are disparate, and you know, a certain family know about this, but it's not widely known. So it's quite a collation of lots of different information.
One house, its history got extended back 23 years, I think it was. Their own belief about their earliest declaration was 2 and a bit decades later than their actual earliest declaration, because we found evidence of it in Cumbria being imported and a wine merchant blending it with other things and selling it to customers. They didn't know. They just don't know what they made. Now they do, of course. Now all the houses are expert on this matter. They pull my book off the shelf and there's the answer. But that is the answer.
Yeah. Well, as if George Sandeman himself says it is the definitive reference book, I think that says everything you need to know. Definitely do check out Port Vintages, the first edition and the second edition.
I should mention it is being distributed this time by the Académie du Vin Library. Mm-hmm. I write books. I really can't do this sell and print and distribute stuff. It's just not my game. Mm-hmm. And they are a professional book company, and they've taken it on. The Académie du Vin Library has it.
Wonderful. So there you go. I'm sure it'll be very easily Googleable. We've got all the information there. Do check it out in autumn, we hope, potentially later, potentially earlier, such is the nature of these things. And as a final question, I'm going to ask, this might be a hard one to pick out, your favourite uncovered fact or gem from your research?
Very famously, there's a small corner of the Naval vineyard called Nacional. It's got quite sandy soil. It's got sufficiently sandy soil that they grow European vines on it. Not European vines grafted onto American roots to defeat phylloxera, but direct European roots and European vines, just one plant, which has been very unusual since phylloxera came in the 1870s. That was planted mid-1920s, and the first vintage was made very famous by Michael Broadbent, who described it as the Everest of vintage port, 1931. Michael Broadbent failed to notice that his auction house sold Nacional 27. That's put a bit of a cat among the pigeons among those who collect these things. I've never seen it since. It is not impossible that it's an error, which is why the book shows you how I know things. What is the evidence? So that even if you don't want to agree, we can at least agree on what the evidence is and reach conclusions from it. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a cat among the pigeons for Nacional collectors.
Well, with a history that is disparate and potentially messy at times, this is your best bet at navigating it. We have lots of copies at Vintage Wine and Port. In fact, we have a copy for every room in our premises of our first edition, and we'll be buying a follow-up second edition, I'm sure, for every room as well. And we urge you to do the same. Thank you so much for joining me, Julian.
Pleasure, thank you for having me.
And enjoy the rest of the BFT.
I will.
Thank you.